A wealthy man instructed his child to select a stepmother from 5 affluent ladies. However, when he learned who genuinely cared for his daughter, he selected the African-American housekeeper instead. "That woman has no business being in our presence," Victoria Ashworth murmured to her fellow competitors while observing Kesha Williams quietly sweeping up broken glass fragments across the marble flooring of the Blackwood estate. The crystal had been inadvertently shattered during the midday meal by 5 elite women vying to marry millionaire widower David Blackwood. At 28 years old, Kesha had been employed at the Grand Atlanta residence for merely 3 months. Yet she had already dramatically changed the existence of 7-year-old Emma, whose mother had perished in an automobile crash 12 months prior. The competitors remained unaware that each harsh remark, each scornful glance, and each degrading attempt was being meticulously monitored by someone harboring secrets far more profound than they could fathom. "Father, what makes those ladies treat Kesha badly?" Emma inquired that morning. Concealed behind David's study entrance, his child's pure question resonated in the entrepreneur's thoughts as he observed via surveillance equipment Kesha enduring humiliation from the 5 competitors who had come 2 weeks earlier to join his matrimonial contest. His therapist had suggested this approach: permit Emma to cohabitate with various women for 30 days and allow her to decide whom she preferred as her new mother. David had meticulously chosen 5 upper-class women: an attorney, a physician, a business executive, a socialite, and an architect. All Caucasian, all wealthy, all appearing flawless in writing. From the initial day, however, something troubling commenced. The quintet, headed by the ruthless Victoria Ashworth, heiress to petroleum wealth, had initiated a quiet campaign against Kesha. Not due to her posing a threat, she was merely the housekeeper, but because Emma obviously enjoyed Kesha's company more than any competitors. "That child must understand social ranking from an early age," proclaimed Priscilla Montgomery, the attorney, during an evening gathering they believed was private. "She must comprehend who represents suitable companions for her social position." They were oblivious that David had positioned recording devices throughout the residence after observing peculiar modifications in Emma's demeanor. The girl, who had finally begun smiling once more, had reverted to experiencing nightmares and panic episodes. Kesha, possessing an educational degree but working as a cleaner to support her ailing mother, never anticipated that her instinctive compassion toward Emma would provoke such malice. Each morning while preparing breakfast, she endured toxic remarks about individuals who exceed their boundaries and unsuitable influences on children from respectable families. Yet something escaped the notice of all 5 competitors. Kesha's gaze held quiet resolve, forged through years of confronting prejudices far more severe than these. When she lowered her head facing insults, it wasn't surrender, it was pure tactical thinking from someone who had discovered that optimal vengeance comes to those patient enough to await the perfect opportunity. The following morning, Victoria assembled the remaining 4 competitors in the estate's private study, distant from the observation they imagined surrounded them. Their developing scheme was both merciless and precisely planned. "We must approach this situation strategically," Victoria declared, adjusting her diamond jewelry while watching Kesha play hopscotch with Emma in the yard through the window. "That woman influences the child inappropriately for our social stratum." Priscilla Montgomery, the corporate attorney, retrieved her Italian leather contact book. "I've researched the legal processes. David can dismiss any worker for cultural incompatibility without employment complications." Cultural incompatibility served as an elegant euphemism. Christina Hawthorne, the dermatologist exclusively serving Atlanta's upper class, laughed. "The issue is more apparent than that." Rebecca Sterling, the architect who had constructed residences for 3 governors, displayed her contempt. "Emma must learn early about suitable relationships. This closeness with domestic staff creates unrealistic social expectations." Amanda Chase, heiress to luxury hotel chains, spoke more bluntly. "Let's abandon pretense. The issue is a black housekeeper occupying emotional territory that belongs to us. Emma should depend on one of us, not her." They remained ignorant that Kesha had grown up hearing identical discussions, the daughter of a domestic worker who had served wealthy households for 30 years. She understood every code, every euphemism, every tactic that privileged individuals employed to rationalize their cruelty. At 14, Kesha had observed her mother's termination after 20 years of exemplary service simply because her employer's son had grown fond of her. The veiled charge of exceeding her position had echoed through that Charleston mansion's corridors. Now, 14 years later, identical venomous whispers were emerging in Atlanta. However, these women couldn't perceive what lay beneath Kesha's apparent modesty. Her Clark Atlanta University education hadn't been merely academic achievement, It had been a silent war declaration against the system that had attempted to destroy her family. During 3 years in public education before accepting domestic positions to finance her mother's cancer care, Kesha had developed the ability to analyze people with surgical accuracy. She recognized exactly when others underestimated her, and more crucially, she knew how to exploit that underestimation advantageously. "Emma, dear," Victoria said that afternoon, intercepting the girl rushing to find Kesha in the kitchen. "How about we try something more refined? I brought a chess set from France specifically for you." "I don't understand chess," Emma responded, attempting to continue her path. "That's precisely why you must learn," Priscilla insisted, gently obstructing the hallway. "Intellectual pursuits are crucial for developing privileged minds." "Kesha taught me checkers yesterday," Emma said, unaware her words created tension. She explained that games improve thinking, regardless of which ones. Christina exchanged a significant look with the others. "Sweetheart, different games have different purposes. Some are more suitable for certain individuals." At that moment, Kesha appeared in the kitchen doorway carrying a tray of fresh cookies. She had heard every word, yet her expression remained calm, almost motherly. "Pardon the interruption," she said with impeccable politeness. "Emma, your chocolate chip cookies are finished." The girl's face brightened immediately. "Kesha, did you create the butterfly-shaped ones you promised?" "I did, sweetheart, and I reserved extras for after dinner." Victoria observed their interaction with increasing annoyance. The genuine affection between them was undeniable, making her mission more pressing. "Kesha," Victoria said, attempting the maid's name initially, pronouncing it like an unpleasant foreign term. "Don't you think you're assuming excessive responsibility regarding Emma? We're present to handle those developmental requirements." Kesha smiled courteously, though something flickered in her dark eyes. "Certainly, Miss Victoria. I was simply following Mr. David's directions about maintaining Emma's nutrition and happiness." "Obviously," Amanda said, entering the conversation. "But feeding differs from creating emotional connections. Maintaining appropriate professional boundaries would be preferable." "I comprehend completely," Kesha responded, her voice retaining identical dangerous sweetness. "I've always been instructed that child care means providing exactly what they require when needed." The response was excessively polite, overly diplomatic, making the 5 women uncomfortable. Something about Kesha's composure suggested intelligence far sharper than they had presumed. That evening, David discreetly monitored through cameras as the competitors organized their subsequent action. They had decided to record each of Kesha's violations, compiling evidence of inappropriate conduct to present to him. David's discoveries differed vastly from their documentation goals. Every recording showed Kesha being professional, caring, and genuinely attentive to Emma's requirements. Conversely, it revealed 5 adult women visibly disturbed by natural affection between a child and caregiver. More troubling patterns emerged from the footage. David began recognizing systematic candidate behaviors, minor sabotage acts, calculated remarks designed to undermine Emma's trust in Kesha, subtle attempts to create situations making her appear incompetent. "Father," Emma said during dinner that night, "why don't the ladies care for Kesha?" The question struck the table like a silent explosion. The 5 competitors froze mid-bite. "What type of question is that, sweetheart?" Victoria said, forcing a maternal smile. "We appreciate all staff members." "That's false," Emma replied with children's brutal honesty. "I heard you say she didn't understand her position." David felt blood draining from his face. "Emma, where did you hear that?" "In the library this morning. They were discussing making Kesha leave." The ensuing silence was overwhelming. 5 intelligent, articulate women suddenly became speechless because a 7-year-old child had exposed their conspiracy with seasoned prosecutor precision. "Emma, you must have misunderstood," Priscilla said hastily. "Adult conversations sometimes sound different to young ears." But David was examining the expressions around the table, and every face confirmed Emma had understood perfectly. Worse, he was realizing his daughter wasn't the only underestimated person in this house. Each new humiliation, every attempt to diminish Kesha only reinforced something her oppressors couldn't see: silent strength fueled by the very injustice they attempted to impose, built on years of resistance that began long before entering that mansion, and which now grew with certainty of someone knowing that optimal revenge is allowing enemies to destroy themselves through their own arrogance. Wednesday morning, Kesha awoke 2 hours earlier than usual and contacted her older sister Diane in Washington, D.C. The conversation occurred in whispers in the small room she occupied in the mansion's wing. "Diane, I need your assistance with something," Kesha said, observing the still dark main house lights through the window. Remember those connections you developed working at the Department of Education? Diane Williams Johnson, a Howard University graduate with investigative journalism credentials and current CNN producer, immediately detected tension in her sister's voice. Kesha, what's happening? You never call at this hour. 5 wealthy women are attacking me, wanting my removal, and I need ammunition for defense. For 20 minutes, Kesha methodically detailed every humiliation, each racist comment disguised as social concern, every sabotage attempt. Diane listened silently, her journalistic experience immediately recognizing systematic discrimination patterns she had investigated for years. Kesha, are you certain about declaring war? These women possess resources and connections. Diane, our mother endured 30 years of humiliation from such people. I won't repeat her experience. Not when I must protect Emma. Emma's mention made Diane understand the situation's gravity. She knew her sister had developed genuine maternal bonds with a child, something that had flourished naturally after years working with traumatized children in public schools. Fine, provide their complete names and give me 48 hours. I'll discover everything you need to know. Meanwhile, David intensified his own discreet investigation. He had quietly hired private investigator Marcus Thompson, who specialized in social elite background checks. His discoveries about the 5 competitors were disturbing. Victoria Ashworth had been expelled from 2 charitable organizations for financial irregularities concealed by her family's wealth. Priscilla Montgomery had a history of labor lawsuits filed by employees alleging harassment and racial discrimination. Christina Hawthorne had lost medical licenses in 2 states before settling in Georgia. Rebecca Sterling had been investigated by the Internal Revenue Service for tax evasion, and Amanda Chase was being sued by 3 former hotel chain employees for creating racially discriminatory hostile work environments. Mr. Blackwood, Marcus said during an encrypted phone conversation. These women aren't merely prejudiced. They're systematic predators who exploit their social position to destroy vulnerable people. Meanwhile, at the mansion, the 5 competitors were escalating their attacks on Kesha. Victoria had designed a meticulous plan creating situations where Kesha would appear incompetent or inadequate. We must document every error, every moment she crosses professional boundaries, Victoria instructed during a morning meeting in Priscilla's bedroom. David is rational. With sufficient evidence, he'll be forced to dismiss her. Priscilla opened her laptop displaying a document she had prepared. I've created a detailed behavioral analysis. Accusations of family privacy violations, inappropriate influence over Emma, attempts at emotional manipulation of her employer. All fabrications, but excellently substantiated, Christina added, admiring the document's legal sophistication. With my medical background, I can include concerns about psychological impact on the child. Rebecca and Amanda exchanged satisfied smiles. They were convinced they had engineered Kesha's perfect destruction, professional, systematic, and impossible to contest by a mere cleaning lady lacking resources or formal education. They were unaware that Kesha had anticipated this exact strategy. During her years in public schools, she had faced administrators using identical tactics to remove black teachers who didn't conform to institutional culture. That afternoon, while discreetly cleaning David's office, Kesha accidentally discovered the competitor report on the printer. She quickly read each accusation, each malicious distortion of her Emma interactions, each attempt to transform her genuine affection into something inappropriate or suspicious. Instead of panic or despair, Kesha felt cold calm spreading through her body. It was identical serenity she had developed at 14 when witnessing her mother's dismissal for excessive emotional closeness with children she cared for. That night, after Emma's bedtime, Kesha made another crucial phone call. This time to her former Clark Atlanta University supervisor, Professor Angela Morrison, one of the leading authorities on child development and separation trauma. Professor Morrison, I need your professional assistance documenting a child's emotional well-being in a very delicate situation. Dr. Morrison, who had advised Kesha on her dissertation about reparative bonds in orphan children, immediately understood the request's gravity. Kesha, you want me to conduct an independent psychological evaluation? Exactly. And I need it done in a manner that will be indisputable in any court or legal situation. During the 40-minute conversation that followed, Kesha outlined not only a defense plan but an offensive strategy that would use the very academic and professional expertise her attackers assumed she lacked. The next day, David watched through cameras as the competitors executed their cruelest sabotage yet. They had concealed Emma's favorite teddy bear, a gift from her deceased mother, then discovered the toy in Kesha's closet. "Emma, sweetheart, we found your teddy bear," Victoria announced dramatically, retrieving the toy from the closet as Emma wept desperately. It was in the employee quarters. The girl looked at Kesha with confusion and hurt. "Kesha, why did you take my teddy bear?" "I didn't take it, sweetheart," Kesha replied calmly. But David could see the pain in her eyes through the camera. Someone must have placed him there mistakenly. "Mistake," said Priscilla, feigning disbelief. "Emma, did you leave your teddy bear in the employee quarters?" "No," whispered Emma, tears streaming down her face. "I always keep him on my bed." Christina approached and knelt to the child's height. "Honey, sometimes people, different people, take things that don't belong to them. Not necessarily from malice, but from envy or desire to possess nice things." At that moment, David witnessed something extraordinary. Instead of desperately defending herself or protesting her innocence, Kesha simply embraced Emma and whispered, "My little one, you know in your heart that I would never take anything of yours. And people who truly love you would never try to confuse that heart." The mature wisdom and unshakable dignity of that response contrasted brutally with the calculated cruelty of the 5 women. David realized he was witnessing not just racial discrimination, but a systematic attempt to psychologically destroy both his employee and his own daughter. That night, while the competitors secretly celebrated what they considered their definitive victory, Kesha received a call from Diane that would completely transform the situation. "Sister, you won't believe what I discovered about your new friends. And best of all, it's all publicly documented. They're much more vulnerable than they realize." Across the mansion, David made a decision that would seal the 5 women's fate. He had observed enough, gathered sufficient evidence, and reached a conclusion that left him both furious and determined. It was time to stop passive observation and start taking action. But first, he needed a very serious conversation with a woman he had completely underestimated, who was about to discover she had allies and resources far more powerful than any attacker could have imagined. Each new cruelty had not only strengthened Kesha's resolve but had revealed a character that transformed each attack into fuel for a response that would be as intelligent as it was devastating, proving that sometimes the person who seems most vulnerable is exactly the one who possesses the most lethal weapons in a war her enemies didn't even know they had lost. The following Friday, David called a special meeting. He had discreetly invited Dr. Angela Morrison, Diane Williams-Johnson from CNN, and investigator Marcus Thompson. The 5 competitors arrived thinking they would finally receive the decision on who would be chosen. "Ladies, before I announce my decision, I would like to share some interesting findings," David said, turning on the room's screen. Victoria smiled confidently. "Certainly, David. We're eager to hear them." The first image that appeared was a news article, "Heiress Diverts Charity Funds." Victoria's photo was splashed across the headline. "That's a lie," Victoria shouted, her face turning red. "Is it?" asked Diane, standing up. "I'm Diane Williams-Johnson, CNN. I confirm every word of this report." David clicked to the next slide. Priscilla Montgomery appeared being sued for racial discrimination against 3 black employees. "David, this is out of context," Priscilla tried nervously. "Context," interrupted Marcus Thompson. "I'm a private investigator. All of these documents are public and verified." The next images devastated Christina, Rebecca, and Amanda one by one. Lawsuits for medical malpractice, tax evasion, hostile work environment. "You are all systematic predators," David said coldly. "And I have documented every attack you have made against Kesha." He played the recordings. The voices of the 5 women echoed through the room, racist comments, sabotage plans, the setup with Emma's teddy bear. "This is invasion of privacy," Victoria yelled. "In my own home." David laughed bitterly. "Where you plotted to destroy an innocent person." Dr. Morrison approached. "As a child development expert, I evaluated Emma this week. The child demonstrates healthy restorative bonds with Kesha, which are essential to her post-traumatic development." Emma, who had been called into the room, ran straight to Kesha. "Kesha, you're not leaving, are you?" "No, sweetheart," Kesha said calmly, hugging the girl. David looked directly at the 5 women. Kesha Williams has a degree in education from Clark Atlanta University, 3 specializations in child development, and impeccable references. You assume she was just a cleaning lady because she's black. Victoria tried one last card. "David, you're making a terrible mistake. Think of the social standing, Emma's future." "I am thinking," David interrupted. "Kesha, will you marry me?" The silence was deafening. Kesha looked at Emma, then at David. "I will." Emma screamed with joy. "Now Kesha will be my real mom." The 5 competitors were in total shock. Victoria was as pale as a sheet. "Impossible," Christina whispered. "You're going to marry the maid." "I'm marrying the most honest woman I know," David replied. "The woman who cared for my daughter with true love while you plotted to destroy her out of pure prejudice." Diane was filming everything. This story will be on the air Monday. Racist socialites exposed, the fall of 5 elite predators. Their reputations, careers, and social circles are destroyed, Marcus added. All documented and irrefutable. Victoria tried to leave, but David stopped her. "Oh, one last thing. I'm suing all of you for conspiracy, slander, and attempted destruction of character. My lawyers are already on it." The 5 left the mansion humiliated, photographed by the journalist Diane had called. Their cell phones were already ringing with angry calls from clients, friends, and family who had seen the first news stories leaking on social media. Kesha remained standing, dignified and serene, holding Emma in her arms. "Thank you for believing in me," she said to David. "Thank you for showing me what really matters," he replied, kissing her gently. While the former contestants faced the total collapse of their privileged lives, a new family was born. Built on true love, mutual respect, and the ultimate victory of dignity over prejudice, proving that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply to live well while those who try to destroy you watch their own masks fall publicly, revealing to the whole world who they really always were behind all that false sophistication. 2 years later, Diane's article had become a case study on racial discrimination in journalism schools across the country. The 5 women faced devastating and permanent consequences. Victoria Ashworth lost her family inheritance when the board discovered her charitable embezzlement. Today, she works as a sales clerk in a department store, constantly recognized by customers who saw the story. Priscilla Montgomery was fired from her law firm and had her license suspended. Rebecca Sterling went bankrupt after losing all her architectural clients. Christina Hawthorne moved to another state after her clinic closed. Amanda Chase sold her hotels to pay workers' compensation claims. Meanwhile, Kesha prospered in an extraordinary way. David had insisted that she finish her master's degree in special education, and now she ran a foundation that offered scholarships to underprivileged children to study music and the arts. "Mom Kesha, look what I learned on the piano today," Emma shouted, running home after class. At 9, she had mastered 3 instruments and spoke fluent Portuguese after lessons with Kesha's grandmother, who had moved into the mansion. The family had grown. 6-month-old David Jr. slept peacefully in Kesha's arms as she organized documents for the foundation named after Emma. "Honey, another thank you letter," David said, handing her the envelope. "This time it's from a mother in Detroit whose son got a full scholarship to study violin." Kesha smiled, remembering the conversation she had had with Emma the week before. The girl had asked why the mean girls had tried to send her away. "Sweetie, some people are born with everything and think that makes them better than others. But you know what the secret is?" Kesha had replied. "People like that always destroy themselves because kindness and cruelty cannot live in the same heart." During an interview on the country's most watched morning show, David was asked about his controversial decision to marry Kesha. "Controversial?" He laughed. "I married a woman who is educated, intelligent, saved my daughter from depression, and taught me the true meaning of family. If that's controversial, then the problem isn't with me." The host pressed on, "But what about the social differences?" "What differences?" David replied, looking directly at the camera. "My wife has a master's degree, runs a foundation that has benefited 1,000 children, speaks 3 languages, and raises my children with more love and wisdom than any socialite could ever dream of having." Kesha watched from home, Emma on her lap, smiling proudly at the man who had chosen to love her exactly as she was. At Emma's school, other children constantly asked about her famous mother. "She's the bravest woman in the world," Emma would reply proudly. "And she makes the best chocolate cake, too." Kesha's true revenge had not been to destroy her attackers. It had been to live so well that her happiness became living proof that people like Victoria were fundamentally wrong about human worth. That Sunday morning, as she watched David playing with their children in the garden where she had once been humiliated, Kesha reflected on how life had changed. It wasn't just that she had won. It was that she had turned her victory into something greater than herself. "Love," David called from the garden. "Come here. Emma wants to show you the song she wrote for you." Kesha walked toward the family she had built, knowing that sometimes the greatest revenge against prejudice is not to strike back with anger, but to respond with so much love and success that you completely rewrite the rules of the game. If you believe that dignity and true love always win out over prejudice and evil, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that in the end, those who truly love always find their place in the world. And that place is always bigger and more beautiful than their enemies could ever imagine.